everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Sarah Huffman, and I am the Art Rental and Sales Associate at the Art Gallery of Alberta. We welcome you to our Meet the Artist series, a part of AGA Live. Here at the gallery, we embrace the teachings of Tatewa, a Cree phrase meaning "welcome, there is room." Even in our house, even the virtual one, everyone is welcome. I'm delighted to be your host for this hour. Joining me today is artist Marla Schole. Before we dive into the subject, I'd like to highlight that this is an interactive event, and we'd like to hear from you. You're welcome to use the chat window on the side screen to share your comments as we discuss with Marla. If a question gets unnoticed or unanswered at the time, please know that we will review all unanswered questions before we wrap up today's event. So Marla Schole was born in Edmonton in 1962. She attended the University of Alberta and received a BFA degree with distinction, nicely done, Marla, in the spring of 1984. Her major area of study was painting, and other areas of study including drawing and sculpture. Schole has been exhibiting her work since 1984. Her work is included in the collections of the Alberta Foundation for the Arts, the University of Alberta Hospital, both as Marla Holt, as well as numerous corporate and private collections in Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Please join me in welcoming our July Meet the Artist, Marla Schole.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Marla.
Nice to see you and be seen by you.
Yes, you as well, and lovely piece that you have behind you.
Oh, thank you very much. First, I'd just like to say thanks to everybody for joining me tonight, especially on a nice, finally warm July evening. I do appreciate it. I like to meet people face to face and discuss my work. I love to hear their feedback. I love to hear their comments. I like to answer their questions. So as Sarah said, feel free to ask questions away, and I'll do my very best to answer them. As I was thinking about what I was going to say tonight, I kind of started reflecting that my life as an artist, and probably artists in general, is kind of like a journey. And since I've been a practicing artist for quite a number of years, as the intro would tell you, it's certainly been a journey for me. It's had its ups, its downs, its highs, its lows, but it's one that I feel really fortunate to have been on, and I'm really excited to continue with it. So I do want to show you all one thing that will indicate the length of my journey here. One moment. I don't know how well you can see this.
That's amazing.
This is the same palette I've used for probably 30 years.
Oh,
it's really heavy. You can see I'm not really good at cleaning it off. There's probably paint on here that's still kind of fresh. So just to give you an idea, this is the journey of my artist life. I'm going to hand it off here so someone can put it away for me.
That's great, Marla. That's an art piece in and of itself, really.
Well, yeah, my daughter, who's assisting me here this evening, has already told me she wants it, at whatever point in time I'm no longer painting. So what she'll do with it, I don't know. She'll have to nail it on the wall because it is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a small fortune in paint on there, but if it's over 30 years, it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a question already from Jeanette Hupka. How much do you actually think that your palette weighs?
5 pounds, between 5 and 10 pounds, maybe.
Yeah, that's hefty.
Yeah, size of a small chicken, perhaps.
That's wonderful. And is that all acrylic, or is there some oil?
No, it's oil paint.
Yeah, oil paint. Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah. And you know that, obviously that takes quite a while for it to dry and harden that many.
Yeah, I used to scrape it off a little more regularly, and I'm just getting lazier in my old age. I did have a professor at U of A who also had a palette similar to that. Cool. He shared with us when we visited him in 4th year. So that being said, I'd also like to say I can't think of a time in my life when I wasn't doing some kind of art, when I wasn't drawing, when I wasn't painting. One of my earliest childhood memories, honestly, is going into my room, sitting down at whatever was in the room at the time, and drawing something with a pencil on a piece of paper. So being an artist is not just something you do, it's kind of something that you are. As far as educational background, I was lucky enough in grade 10 to have Jim Vest as my art teacher.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, some of you are probably familiar with his work. He was originally from England, but he's a very well-regarded Canadian landscape painter, I guess you've referred to him as. So yes. Unfortunately, he was only there for 1 year, but I happened to be there at the same time that he was. So
that's really neat. We do have him, and we have a couple of his pieces in art rental and sales as well.
Well, there you go. And I did see one of his pieces at Art on the Block the last time I was there too. So.
Oh, nice.
Awesome. So after high school, I, as you said, did do my BFA at the U of A. Mm-hmm. The time I was there, I'll just advance to the first image. A lot of the professors were very engaged in doing color field abstract painting. So we were, I would say, somewhat encouraged to move within that field. So this isn't a really great slide. The right-hand side kind of has a shadow on it, but I still have it in the basement on a huge stretcher frame. I thought it would be interesting to show it here tonight. It may get taken off the stretcher soon, and I might do something massive for myself. I haven't decided yet, though. Nice. That'll be a big undertaking. Yeah. So that would be.
Oh, sorry, Marla. I was just going to ask, what year did you create that piece?
This would probably have been 1982.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, 1982.
And in your year of study, like, were you a first year, second year?
That would have been second year.
Yeah.
First year, we did not too much color work. First 6 months of BFA at the U of A in those days anyway was strictly drawing, foundations, the basics.
Wow, that's neat.
Drawing cubes in every way, shape, and form you could think of. We did move on to figure drawing and just getting the foundations down, which actually I think is really helpful and really, really appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it helps you understand what you're going to create, whether what medium you're using is your choice, but having that foundation, is really important.
Yeah. So the next image is just another student work. Probably this would have been from third year.
Oh, okay.
A little bit different. I was experimenting with different shapes and texture and stuff. You can't really tell from the slide, but I think there's gravel.
Cool.
Something in the dark area. I can't remember what the substance was. So
yeah. Awesome.
Then fourth year, again, totally different. I think I was kind of under the influence of Matisse at the time. I did quite a few of this similar kind of subject matter, and then added portraiture in with that. Yeah. This is the fellow we went to school with, who I've lost touch with, unfortunately. Oh. He was a lovely, lovely fellow. So he was nice enough to pose for me for this. And again, this one's really large too. So scale was something that they emphasized as well.
For sure.
Working a large scale. So some of the pieces I do now are large, like the one behind me. Some are small. You know, it just depends on how I feel, if I want to experiment.
Right.
This was probably the first serious landscape that I did. It was in our BFA graduation show. And as I mentioned to you earlier, the year we graduated, we had a very small space. Your 4 years of work, you were only allowed to show one piece, which was very difficult to choose. And I had done a few landscapes in fourth year, and something about this just kind of spoke to me. That this was the piece that I wanted to show. And it's interesting because landscape has kind of become my passion after that. Yeah,
that's amazing.
So that's actually been what I have shown since graduation.
Yeah.
And also I've had like a very lovely long relationship with Art Rental. I highly recommend them. If you want to, just test drive, as I call it, a painting or whatever, it makes it very easy and very affordable for people to do. And they have, I have to say thank you. You've sold a fair number of my pieces over the years. This next couple are a couple of the older ones that I've sold.
Yeah, absolutely. And as from an art rental and sales perspective, a lot of the clients that I get who are interested in your work really find that connection to the piece, and they just see it as something they've seen before, and it almost has that familiar feel of this is Alberta or this is my home, and bringing it home to them and having it forever is amazing. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's lovely to hear, because that's actually one of the things that I really enjoy that people will say to me. I like this particular one. Someone said to me, I've been to this place. I know where it is. Yeah. This is my favorite place in the world. This person actually said to me. It's up at Jasper and Cavell Meadows, if people are familiar with it.
Oh, wonderful.
The glacier this is just a small glacier up there. It might have changed shape since then, but that's where that one is.
Well, and it's original. It's, a photo can only do so much in that context. And if you are able to recreate it in a painting, and someone to see that and recognize that so clearly is really neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a question, Marla, from Robin. In terms of landscape pieces, how do you usually get ideas to paint? Do you usually use photos? If you do you usually take the photos?
Oh, yeah. Good question. I work 99.99% exclusively from photos.
Yeah.
And up until very recently, they were always photos that I took myself. Cool. If they're not photos I take myself, it's usually one of my two daughters have been taking photos for me within the last 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
It might be, we're driving somewhere. I'll say, I can't take a photo when I'm driving, but look at that, take some photos. Take some photos. They'll send me via email. And the reason for that is definitely I want it to be my own image and my own interpretation of that image. Yeah. There's millions of beautiful photographs out there, but it's not necessarily my image. So if I ever were to take someone else's, I would definitely ask their permission first. I would never source out something and not know where it came from.
Right.
But yeah, I started using photos from electronic sources not too long ago and just propping up the iPad. And I really miss having the photograph in my left hand when I'm working. I usually always be holding the photograph, painting from the photograph. So
yeah.
This is another older piece that Art Rental sold some years ago, and I just really like the feeling in this one. It just gives you the feeling of the sunny mountain field.
Yeah, it's very gentle. I really like this one. Yeah.
This is one that's there currently. Again, this is Cavell Meadows up at Jasper. Mm-hmm. This is, I guess I'd like to say something about materials that I use. Mm-hmm. Most of my paintings are oil paintings. This particular one was done on a beautiful piece of pre-prime linen that someone actually gave me many years ago. It was wonderful, but it's very expensive. So most of what I do is on cotton, but I do try and use artist quality paint as much as possible. Mm-hmm. For a variety of reasons, I prefer oil paint. They last forever. Here's another little object from my days. This is the last tube of paint from 1980, whatever it is. Still usable, still good.
Yeah.
You can see I don't use a lot of red, so maybe that's part of the reason. If it was yellow, it would be gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Ago, but green. And I like the oil paint, the way you work wet on wet. With acrylic, I find, if you want to like block things in and build up layers, acrylic's good for that. But to me, I just prefer the oil paint.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm an oil paint snob, I have to admit.
Where do you purchase your paint from? Is there a specific spot in town where you go?
Oh, well, the paint spot is definitely the number one place I love to go to. I know the owner. We actually worked together many years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They're definitely very, very knowledgeable, very friendly. Yeah,
super helpful. So shout out to all their staff, especially now.
Yeah.
This is another one that's currently with Art Rental. My lovely children when they were young. Once in a while, I will paint the figure within the landscape. Mm-hmm. Not too often, but I do like to do it because it does provide a little bit of, I guess, a challenge.
Right.
Landscape, you can be very, very free in your interpretation. The figure, especially if you want it to be recognizable, you have to be a little more precise with, right? So again, this is just, hopefully it gives you a nice feeling of what it was like following these guys through the woods.
Yeah, it's very whimsical. I really enjoy that piece. To me, when I look at it, I see Terwilliger Dog Park.
It was somewhere in the city. I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was definitely taken in the river valley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, again, I know landscape is like a narrow kind of subject matter, but within it, there's a lot of variation you can have. Like, I'm always trying to challenge myself in different ways. For instance, I'm just going to take myself off the video here for a minute. So, down the lower right, you can see, I really like the way the rocks are rendered in this particular piece. So for me, that's a challenge. I'm always striving to do things that are a little bit different, right? So, and again, I just want people to have the sense of being there. If that was the one defining thing about my work, it would be, I want you to feel like you're there and you have the feeling of being there and just enjoying the scene for whatever it is.
Well, I 100% believe you. I feel like my toes are in that water.
It would be nice today, definitely, to have toes in the water.
And so for doing a piece that has water in it, how is the process for you? Where would you start?
Well, in general, with anything, I usually sort of work from the top and work towards the bottom, but I do also work overall as far as marking and where things should go, or marking certain, say with this one, putting a little bit of green in the top and then working it into the bottom, working it overall so you see how one piece affects everything else within the piece.
Right, absolutely. Because once you put something down and you feel that real connection to it, you kind of have that inspiration for something on the other side or what to play with. Yeah, absolutely.
With this piece, the water would just have been built up with layers and layers and layers. As soon as you think, well, it's at the point where if I do anything, it'll either improve it or make it worse. It's time to stop then.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I feel oil is a little bit more forgiving than acrylic in a way, because you can kind of, work it into something else, right?
It really depends on personal preference and your method of working. I like to work wet on wet. Like if I'm putting a layer of dry paint or new paint on dry paint, to me it feels a bit odd. Like sometimes I will do it, but it's out of my comfort zone for some reason. So.
Yeah.
This particular scene is actually, it's looking at Kelowna. I'm not sure if that's downtown, but the artist license I was thinking of today when I looked at this, I totally removed all the people walking along that boardwalk there. I prefer to think no crowds, no people. I don't know whatever reason that was for, but yeah. It's a nice peaceful summer scene in Kelowna.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries. It is hot out today for sure.
Yeah.
So I do have a question for you myself. Do you have an overall goal or an outcome that you're hoping to create when you begin a new piece? I know you had talked about you want someone to feel like they're there, but maybe you can take that question as more of a technical and a tactical standpoint of, do you set new goals for yourself within using a certain medium or a certain image or anything like that?
Sometimes I have almost a specific thing in mind that I'm trying to achieve.
Right.
I have to say, I feel that I never 100% really achieve vision in my mind. I'm not saying I don't think any of my pieces are successful. It's just they're not exactly as I would have envisioned them in my mind. This is maybe not a good example of that, but I'll maybe touch on that a little later when one of the ones I'm going to show in a little bit here. But yeah, just the number one thing is to convey the way that the scene made me feel. And I hope it makes you feel the same thing. Like if you're if you're in Edmonton in January and it's minus 40 out, if I look at something like this, it's kind of like, oh, it's like a breath of fresh air, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes you if you might not be in that place right then, it can take you there.
Yeah. So this is another older piece that Art Rental sold years ago, and it's a bit of a departure because it's done with pastel, which I do work with periodically. I used to more frequently than I have lately. I actually did start a pastel piece this last week, and compared to painting, it's just taking me forever. I'm like, oh my gosh, drawing is hard.
Yeah, it's so different. It really is.
It's different, yeah. But I think you can tell like the quality of the mark making, etc. I think an artist's brushstroke or the way they draw, it's almost like a signature or a fingerprint in itself. Like if you look at certain subject matter by, say, Monet or by Renoir, they would have painted the exact same scene. You know, if you're familiar with their work, I feel that I can tell immediately which one painted which. It's just the way that they put the paint down and the mark making. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So pastel, and then here is a newer pastel.
That's really neat. I really enjoy that piece.
Yeah. This one is currently at Art Rental, and it's actually it's Elk Island Park, obviously in the fall.
Yeah.
But again, it's the same kind of vigorous mark making, and the contrast between the yellow and the blue. As I look through my work, I'm like, I use that a lot. Obviously, that's my go-to thing. But sometimes when you don't, you do it piece by piece, you don't really look at the big pictures. So it's actually been quite fun for me to sort of look through things and reflect on my practice as a whole.
Yeah.
But yes, pastel it's got its pluses and its minuses. So
yeah, absolutely.
I do like to switch between mediums, though. Again, that's another way it kind of keeps your practice fresh. I also, within the last year or two, started doing some watercolor paintings.
Oh, okay.
Which are, it's a challenging medium. People often think it's good for a beginner. Not true. Don't. If you want to be a good watercolorist, get yourself a good painter and learn some techniques. I do enjoy it though. I've had a few varying degrees of success, I think.
Yeah. And so when you're approaching a watercolor, because I've heard many different things from artists over my time, do you prefer to put the water down and then the color, or the color and then the water, or do you do combinations of different things for different shading areas?
I've never heard of the color and then the water. I'll have to try that. It depends on if I'm doing a large, say, a background sky, I would probably wet that area of the paper and then add the color. If it's smaller areas, I just would maybe dilute the brush and mess around with that. But I'm very impatient in general. With watercolor, you need to be patient. You have to let it dry between your layers, and I just don't want to do that. I want to go, and I'm done. Yeah. This was the one I was referring to a little while before when you were saying the question you had asked.
Right.
At this particular time, I was looking at a lot of Tom Thompson's work, and I'm just always so struck with how bold he can be with color, especially that deep, deep blue, deep reds. I kind of set myself, I'm going to do that in the water when I do this particular piece. Yeah. Well, as you can see, it's not really that bold. The blue is a little, but the red, it's kind of muted. Like sometimes you have to know how far you can push the color before I think maybe it's gone overboard. But that's a good example of, practice not exactly meeting your objective.
Yeah, absolutely.
But something else I did try and convey in this particular piece, a lot of people really responded like, oh, I love the yellow sky. And they probably thought it was supposed to be a sunset. What I was trying to convey was if you're in the mountains and you're hiking in the day and it's a cloudy day, but the sun is about to come out, you have that certain amount of the feeling of the light that any moment it's going to break out and it's going to be a beautiful blue sky. This is kind of what I was going for with this particular one. So.
I really enjoy the mountain that you have in the background because it is so gentle, but it's such a big solid mounting.
Yeah.
That's really neat. Yeah. That would be a really great piece in a living room or an office, just because it really has that warmth, but the shading as well. I really enjoy that.
Well, I do believe you guys sold this about a year and a half ago, but I wasn't told it went. I wasn't told exactly where it went, but I have a feeling I know where it went, and I was quite pleased about where it went. I don't know if we're able to share that or not. We'll leave that to Jeanette. So leading into that, like the feeling of light, these are some of my newer pieces that I've really enjoyed doing, both in terms of trying to convey that sense of light and also this different shape. I had these stretchers really for years and years and reused them, and they were sitting around for a while, and I'm like, what am I going to do with these? And it just occurred to me, like a really vertical subject matter, like these tall trees.
Yeah.
Try it on this. And it just was so much fun to do. I just loved them. I love this whole series. And to me, it's like, it's almost a door that's leading you out. You can actually step into the painting, or you can step into the scene.
Yeah.
And also the way the light comes through the branches there, it made me think of, unfortunately, I've never been there, but perhaps stained glass in a Gothic cathedral.
Yeah.
That the light would come through. So to me, there's almost a reverence when you're out in nature sometimes. So I did kind of a series of these particular subject matter. This is another one that's related, where again, the objective was really to show the feeling of that light that comes through the leaves when you're walking through the forest, and the sunshine, and just the way all the colors reflect. And it's just like, if you can capture something and convey that to someone, to me, then that's been a successful piece, I think. Yeah. So this one would be one within the same series. Again, this is hiking up at Mayette. And if you can look at the tiny bit of the mountain in the background there, that's the same mountain as the one with the yellow sky before.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it moving down to the hot springs?
It's by the hot springs. It goes by the old hot springs.
Right. Yeah.
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 Not the killer one that goes up to Ashler Ridge. Yeah. I've done that, and you're too exhausted by the end to take photographs. But these three pieces actually are available. They're actually the same size and available as a triptych. Yes. And I have to say, this might have been my favorite piece that I've done within the last couple of years. I think they turned out very successfully for what I was aiming to do. So
yeah, I completely agree. We have them in art rental and sales, and I've played with them a little bit on our racks, because we can, change the heights and everything. And I've put one lower, one in the middle, and one a little higher, and that portrays that you're climbing through a mountainside, or you can do it vice versa, or all at the same. And it's very playful, and I think it is a really nice piece for a home, because it just has that warmth that you've been portraying, but that playfulness and adventure. Yeah.
And I would say the photographs that I took really don't do it justice. So, go on down and look in person, people. No, I have been told by people have recommended perhaps get professional photographs done of your work, and I think it would make a difference in this instance. But I am really pleased with this particular one.
Yeah.
This is another one that I have done that's along the same line.
Right.
Just feeling like you're stepping into the path,
Yeah.
As well as this. Again, this is up at Mayette. Easy day drive from Edmonton to Mayette. So if I'm lacking in inspiration, sometimes I'll go for a day trip, go for a hike. Yeah. I have actually stacks and stacks of photographs that I've taken over the years. Someday I may use them, someday I may not. I did a painting that a lady purchased a few years ago. I'd had that photograph for probably 25 years.
Oh, wow.
And every so often I would look at it and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to paint that. Don't know when, but I will paint it sometime. And when the time was right, I guess. Yeah.
Wonderful. Have you ever used a combination of, say, a sky from one picture and the land from another picture, or anything?
I think I may have tried, say, the same scene, but to kind of, actually the one with the yellow sky was more than one photograph. I did jig that one together slightly, but not in the sense where, I took the sky in Calgary and I used the fields in Edmonton. That would be a no-no, definitely. But speaking of fields, this is interesting for me because lately I've been doing a lot of prairie-scapes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's surprising to me because it never really appealed to me as a subject matter until recently.
Right.
Skies were sometimes just the background, they didn't get my full attention as maybe the foreground or the the wildflowers, the undergrowth, the things that I was trying to portray then. But again, like I said, I like to try and do different things, mix things up a little bit if I can. So this is just a small piece that was kind of an early example towards that. But again, there's your blue and your yellow again.
Right.
Your typical Alberta field in this one.
We do have a question from Jeanette.
Mm-hmm.
When you work off of photographs, is it a standard 4x6 or do you print it in a larger format?
4x6, but sometimes, like for instance, the long narrow pieces, that was a 4x6 photograph, but I just cropped it to how I thought the composition would work from the photograph. And then, I went from there. So sometimes, the level of detail, if I were to be a photorealistic artist, it's not really conducive to in that sense. But now with the iPad, if you want to zoom in, you just double tap and, that's what that looks like.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of advantage in that regard.
Right.
But here we have another lovely canola field and ending storm. So I think we can relate to that this year.
That feels like a drive from Calgary to Edmonton for sure.
Yeah.
When you see it coming behind you and you're like, oh no, gotta get home.
Yeah. And running away from the storm. Again, your canola field, your storm. This one is available at rental as well. It's been there for a little while.
Yeah. I enjoy this piece. The texture of the canola in person is spot on. It's really nice.
Yeah, and I, again, like I said, when I had that influence of trying to use that brilliant blue, I was given really expensive cobalt blue paint as a Christmas gift a few years ago. Some of this is like straight from the tube, and I never do that. Yeah, very, very rarely will I not mix something like I showed you my palette. It's mixing colors all the time. But I just wanted to see how that brilliant blue, and it will tie in with the blues in the clouds there as well.
Yeah.
So if I'm working all over on a piece, I'm going to put a little bit of the blue up in the clouds, and then I'm going to put a little bit down in the foreground, and I just keep working, layer by layer, until I get to do these lovely yellow bits here, which is the fun part, as I call it. You add the little bit of texture and the highlight at the end, and that's the fun part. Yeah. And sometimes I'll try out subject matter in a smaller format. This is not small, but not really that large. And then I'll carry it on with something like this, which was going to be the piece behind me today, but I ended up selling it to someone Monday. So. It's very large. It's larger than what's behind me, and now I have to package it up and ship it. So that's another project for another day. But yeah, I like to test out that subject matter with something smaller. I set myself the task of I'm going to see what I can do with a really larger one here, and just convey the movement in the clouds and the fields and
So for a piece like this one, how long did that take you to complete?
That's a question I get asked quite a lot. This one, because it was large, took me. Typically, when I work, I like to work for 2 or 3 days. Not uninterrupted, but almost continuously. I might work for a couple hours in the morning, and then I'll work in the afternoon,
Right.
go back the next day. This maybe took between 3 and 4 days. Like I do actually tend to work pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But as I said, that pastel drawing, I've been working on it for a week and it's not done. And I'm like, whoa, it should be done by now. But yeah, it's, I think if you can work quickly, there's a certain immediacy to the way you work as well. So, yeah.
Definitely.
This one again is at Art Rental. Again, it's trying to push myself with, you know, the sunset and how colorful can I really make it without actually having it be a bit too much. This one, I think it's more or less successful. It's every time I look at it, I'm kind of like, is it too much? Is it not? You know.
Well, it's different from your yellow skies and your right. Like it's different from what you've done before, but it still has that sense of you. Like I can feel that's your piece. Yeah.
And like I said, if you're going to be painting something, it will look like your work, even if. I think there's a fair amount of variety in my application, and especially lately as I've been doing different prairie-scapes. I've kind of been working in the way that the piece just speaks to me, but there's still, you know, you've made it with your hand, therefore it's going to look like your piece.
Right.
If that makes sense. I thought I was doing a prairie series, and then I realized maybe I just like to paint hay bales because here they are. But yeah, just trying to capture the evening sunset light and the wispiness, you know, the clouds that float off in the sunsets. And
yeah, absolutely.
Again, basically just to give people the feeling of, I know that place, even if it might be not be the particular place, you know, right. I know the place. I know that feeling that place gives me, kind of thing. Yeah. This is the full image of the one that's behind me here.
Oh, all right.
And yeah, just trying to convey again the changing light, the typical Alberta scene. Again, where you see the storm in the background.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And again, trying to work with, I see so many people, landscape artists in particular, that seem to work really well with purple in their shadows. And I find it's kind of a struggle for me. So here I'm always trying to add purple, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. Is it too purple? Is it too reddy purple? Like you see, there's not too much red in the work, but yeah. Trying to emulate what I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is quite recognizable, though, of the sun behind that cloud and the, you know, that different area that it hits, and it just gives off that different hue. I think it's gorgeous.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And again, the light breaking through. There must be a theme going with the light coming through. And the blue sky. This was one of my daughters lives up in Athabasca, and it's just a beautiful drive, fairly short drive up there through what I call the northern prairie. It's just a little bit different than, say, southern Alberta, or if you're driving between Edmonton and Calgary. It's just slightly different. And here again, they were just like these clouds kind of scudding across the sky. The light's just about to come through them.
Yeah.
There's a particular spot on the road where you can look and you can see where there's trees. It's beautiful in the fall. It's not really, I think there's one later on that gives you kind of a sense of that has the yellow foliage in the fall. Again, another storm cloud, another theme here. This one you can see, like I said, sometimes stylistically it's a bit different because I had painted this in a similar manner to the one previous. And it just, to me, it didn't look like it was working. It just looked like a big dark blob in the middle of the canvas. And I'm like, well, what can I do to try and maybe make this a little, you know, more visually interesting or delineate what I was doing? So this was one of those instances where it had actually pretty much dried. Yeah. And then we went back into it and I worked and I added all these kind of curlicue lines in there.
It's very playful.
Yeah, it's. I think it does convey a sense of what I was trying to convey. And actually, in the lower left hand there's this tiny little bit. I don't know if you can see. It's like a little ripple of yellow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was purely accidental. I just happened to step back and I went, "Oh, I like that. I'm not changing it," kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I do, as part of my practice when I'm oil painting, I always, I don't sit down to paint. I am always standing. I'm always looking. I'm always stepping back to look and to examine. Sometimes I'll turn around and not look for a couple of minutes and then turn around, and it's like a first impression. So that does help you to identify maybe where there's problem areas or areas where you're not really satisfied with the result.
Mm-hmm.
And the large one, when you asked me how long it took me to paint, I actually had sore thigh muscles as I was doing that, because I had to keep like standing up and squatting down, standing up and squatting down to get the size of the piece. Good exercise painting too. This one is also currently in art rental. Again, it's a little bit different with the linear quality.
Yeah.
It's Horse Thief Canyon down by Drumheller.
Oh, okay.
And I think somebody actually remarked that no, it was a similar piece to that. Someone remarked that they recognized that particular place as well. Mm-hmm. But I do like the different, just playing with the shapes in the foreground there and the different mm-hmm. colors.
Yeah.
Again, trying to get that purple down just right. Yeah. It's like my nemesis is purple.
It's your Achilles heel.
My Achilles heel, but I just keep plugging away. I just want to keep working. This is actually an example of a photo reference that I would use.
Right.
Just to give you an idea. Sometimes, especially lately, I've actually worked quite closely to what the photograph looks like, and sometimes it's just an inspiration that's kind of a jumping off place for me to try and convey something. So this is the photo reference. This is the resulting piece.
Yeah.
And we were driving, actually we were going Highway 21, I think it was. We were going to Cypress Hills. Yeah. And just the way the light was shifting, the clouds were shifting, the hills were, there was enough of a kind of a rolling quality of the hills where the shadow, they were in light, they were in shadow. It was just such a neat phenomenon. And I really, that's what I tried to capture. Yeah. This photograph maybe doesn't give you that much of a sense, but
I like yours better.
Well, that's what it really looked like. Yeah, just, whatever.
Well, and just another question for you. How does your mood affect how you're painting and what colors you're using? And say you take that piece, that picture that you took, and you go to paint, and all of a sudden you're, really upset. Do you use those darker purples? Do you have those harsher lines? Or do you still want to find that airiness that photo had? Or
I don't think my mood really ever affects me in that way.
Right.
But the process of painting, if I am in a bad mood or, something in the world is bothering me, like we're all experiencing lately, it really does honestly take me away from anything like that. When I'm painting anyway, I find that I am concentrating on that and pretty much only that exclusively. And I might, usually when I start a piece, I'll think about it beforehand. I'll look at the photograph. I'll think, what would be successful for this, and how do I really want to convey this? Yeah. So I will have that plan in the back of my head.
Right.
Sometimes it'll come to fruition a little better than others as far as the plan. I think this is actually the last piece that I've completed. It's not the last one in the presentation, but it seemed to go with the previous one a little bit better. Yeah. I think this maybe came pretty close to the conception that I had in my head. So perhaps I'm getting somewhere after all these years. Here's the one I was talking about with the drive to Athabasca and the yellow. Yeah. And then again, I'm trying to use that deep, like the deep Tom Thompson blue.
Yeah.
In the sky there, I find it's pretty effective.
Yeah, absolutely. You can really see that depth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I always am kind of like struggling. How far do you push it? Do you push it even further? Is it too much? Like the one with the sunset?
Right.
Is it too much? It depends. And it's nice because different people view art in a different way. Some may appeal to some and others may like something like this. This is kind of interesting as far as your previous question to do with mood.
Yeah.
I painted this the second week of March this year, which was just when COVID really, really starting to come in on the news. I had some days off.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just going to paint something calm. I'm just going to use a little bit more muted palette. And it just had it probably had a calming effect on me. And I think when you look at it, it's a fairly calming piece.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so like, if I'm at the end of my hard work day, it's like, if I'm at the end of working, this is like the sunset, and this is the piece after you've done your work for the day or whatever you've gone through during the day. This is just meant to calm you. It's called serenity. Serenity. Yeah. This is another example of a photo reference from southern Alberta. As you can tell, no trees.
Yeah.
And this one was done right after the previous one. And as you can see, it's pretty close in this instance to the photo reference.
Right.
And I started thinking about it after the fact. Like I started to use a way smaller brush than I usually do. Sorry, I'm going to just minimize myself here.
Oh, I can do it.
You can see off in the far distance on the right there. That's actually done with a very much smaller brush than I usually use, just to try and get that detail.
Yeah.
And I started reflecting on it later on, and I was thinking maybe I just wanted that extra level of concentration that I needed to just even take even more out of myself, because it was quite an interesting thing to do. I don't know which I prefer. I can't choose, one over the other. I can only choose what I feel like doing at the moment, I guess. And again, same kind of theme, hay bales, blue sky, done in quite, I think, a fairly quote unquote realistic manner, this particular one. But again, just your typical Alberta scene. I didn't realize it related so much to the prairies, but I've lived in Alberta my whole life. My father is from a farming background. There's other farming connections with myself, so it's obviously something that's as important to me as hiking in the woods is.
Yeah.
This is last photo reference here. This is again while driving, just when the sun is about to set and is almost like the dew or the fog is kind of settling over the ground. Again, that's how I tried to convey that particular feeling. But they're, like I say, they're quite different. This last, I call them, a prairie series. They are about the prairie, but they're quite different in a lot of different ways. So I don't know if that's a comment on my moods, or as I said, I do always want to try and challenge myself.
Right. Yeah.
In various ways.
Yeah.
Within the landscape, genre.
So for this piece here, can you give me like a timeline of what went down first, what went second, and how did you work in those highlights of the sun? And
again, I almost always start with the sky and kind of work my way down.
Right.
And basically from top to bottom. Yeah. Like I probably put a little bit of the blue down by where the hay bales are. I don't really draw the image. I will make a few marks as far as, well, here's the horizon going to be with a pencil prior to that. Just basically a few guidelines of where things are going to be, but I don't make any kind of detailed drawing prior to doing the piece.
Right.
So if I have those marks, like I probably made a mark where the hay bale was. And so I put a little bit of blue in there. And then I, just gradually would build it up with whatever color.
Right.
Until I got actually the result. And then always, like probably that little lighter bit right by the horizon there, indicate the fog. I would add that later. Add all the little highlights and the small details and the thicker paint later, like I call the fun part.
Yeah. You see everything coming together in that time. Yeah.
So I call it the fun part because it is challenging, it is work, but ultimately it's also enjoyable for me. It's what I do.
Yeah, wonderful. I have another question for you.
Okay.
It's a good one.
Okay, I'm ready.
How have you continued to develop your career considering the fast-paced technological trends?
Well, I'm a bit late to online world. I post things on Instagram. I just, with the help of my daughter, launched a website this month. I've been meaning to do it for literally years, and because of certain circumstances, she was able to help me out with it this year. So it's a really good resource for people who are interested in your work. And of course, everybody looks online and everything now. So yeah.
Well, especially in this time when necessarily going out and seeing something in person might not be available to some folks, having that website and having that, Instagram page or whatever it is to initially have that connection with you.
I was after I graduated, I was fairly active as far as trying to get out there and get my work shown in various venues, etc. For a period of years, I was, for a few different reasons, a little bit not as engaged with my art career, but within the last 5 years or so, I've been doing more work and showing a little bit where I could. And right now, I haven't really tried to apply anywhere because I don't know if A, if you're accepted, and B, will it actually occur, right? So things are a bit up in the air for everybody right now. But art rental has been like a constant for me, and I'm really appreciative of you guys. Like, you've been good support over the years.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and it's really nice to have because we have all of our inventories on our website.
Right.
And so, if somebody really enjoyed the pieces that they've seen through whatever kind of social media or have seen it at a friend's house or whatever, and they can go and look up what we have of yours, and then they can book an appointment and come see it in person. So that's that extra step to allow them to see it, especially in this time.
Yeah. And if you do go to my website and there is a piece that you guys have at Art Rental, it'll take you directly via a link to the Art Rental site. So awesome. All the information will be there, and away you go.
Awesome. And so if anybody has any questions in the audience, feel free to type them up. We're just about reaching the end of the event, but I do have another question for Marla as well. For any emerging artists who are watching, do you have any words of advice or encouragement during this time?
During this time specifically, I don't think so, but in general, just do what you love to do. Do it because you love it. I mean, some people definitely are really good at marketing themselves. Some people are really successful with online marketing and things of that nature. And not to take away from them, I think that's great. But I think number one piece of advice I would give is do it because you love it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. Thanks, Marla.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us today. It was really an honor to watch Marla's presentation and take in all those wonderful landscapes and get that feel for your artistic practice. We're really appreciative to have you a part of Art Rental, and we're excited to see what's next and what else you create. And yeah.
There will be a pastel drawing at some point. I'll send you a picture directly so you can see what
some progress pics.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Well, just to wrap up again, thank you all so much for joining us today. The AGA team continues to work hard to bring you art, creative projects to do at home, and engage with you daily. We look forward to seeing you at the gallery and in Art Rental and Sales. We're definitely ready for you when you're ready to come see us. To view the work of Marla Schole that you can rent or purchase on your own for your own collection, again, like I mentioned earlier, just visit Art Rentals and Sales or check out the inventory online at youraga.ca. And then if you have any further questions for our team, feel free to send over an email to artrental@youraga.ca. Thank you so much, folks. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and stay connected with us.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Marla.
Bye-bye.
Bye.